This is Festival Sounds. I'm Bilal. This is the final part of our 3-part special with Roy Gurvitz. We're talking all about Lost Vagueness here. I think it's a really good episode. There's so much that there is to tell here, and we did our best to bring it to you in about 40 minutes. But I could have spoken to Roy all day, and actually I did spend most of the day with him. He was so open with his stories, and what we've done is bring the best of that conversation to you here. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please give us a follow on Apple or Spotify, and if you really enjoy the show, give us a 5-star rating.
So anyway, my ridiculous idea was we'll have disco music, we'll have vintage music, we'll have wind-up gramophones, we'll have theatrical entertainment, we'll have a whole array of things that isn't banging techno.
And that was Lost Vagueness.
That was where Lost Vagueness actually started. So the first year we did it, it was literally just a ballroom and a casino. And the casino was a little dressing up thing, and it was very small. And as we couldn't cope, because you know we had enough space for about 2,000 people, and I have no idea at that point, because we were ill prepared, how many tens of thousands of people wanted to get into our little space.
I think because it's not like you had a blueprint to follow.
No, we wrote the rule book.
Which you mentioned, like dressing up and playing disco, and that wasn't that corner. That was all brand new.
Well, no, was it brand new? But it was also very much that was the corner that was the problem. So, although I was suggesting this new approach, I had no idea how to achieve it, because at the same time as the main concentration of the problem being the people that I was there with that have all brought sound systems because they want to sell beer and drugs, I've now got to convince them that in order for them to stay there to carry on in any way whatsoever being part of that event, we have to change. And there's two ways that we needed to change. One, we needed to make a different noise, and the other one was that we needed to look different. We needed to change our appearance.
The look felt like you were locking horns with the authorities.
Because prior to Lost Vagueness, the look of a festival goer was military garb, dreadlocks, and a dog on a string, and boots with no shoelaces. That was the look, and it was quite aggressive. It's an aggressive look. But now what I've gone is put on a shirt and a suit and a ball gown. I'm not saying who has to wear what. Yeah, anybody can wear either. Yeah. And so we just confused the enemy, if you like.
It's very disarming.
People had no idea what the fuck was going on. They had no idea how to deal with what they were dealing with.
Can I ask a silly question? Where in the Somerset countryside do you find a ball gown?
I scoured Oxfam shops.
Really?
Yeah, so I went to every charity shop I could find, and in the corner of every charity shop there was always a rail of some suits, some dress suits, ties, and some ball gowns, mostly prom dresses, right, and then a few wedding dresses. And I went after I'd said to Michael, this is what we're going to do, and then he went, okay then. Yeah, you do that. And I went away and I went, shit, okay. So this was the previous festival, so I've got essentially probably nine months or less to try to create that. And how are we going to create it, you know? So
how do you get people on board for
part of it?
How do you say to someone who dresses the way you described, military type garb, how do you convince someone that you're going to put on a dinner jacket?
Because I explained that if we didn't do that, we'd never be coming back.
And I'm guessing those people loved the festival. They loved the kind of the fun element of it, and they made money out of it.
Yeah.
So they wanted, that's having your cake and eat it. So they wanted it to carry on.
Yeah.
Were they what you'd describe as? So Lost Vagueness had this reputation for being, from an artistic perspective, really cutting edge, really forward thinking, really dynamic. Were they those people who you saw that way, or did they become that?
I think everybody's got the potential to be creative. I mean, it takes a certain type of person to move out of a house and into a vehicle. I think it's more it's easier to some extent today. I mean, there's a whole van life movement, and that's because people can see it before they do it. You can see it online, and you go, "Oh, I could do that." Whereas then, you couldn't see it. When I got a bus, I'd never seen people living in a bus. It was a new experience. So I think it takes a certain type of person, and there's a certain amount of creativity involved in going, I can do something different than what I'm doing.
And they were earning a living already by being creative. That was
well, it depends what you call creative, isn't it? Certainly they created an alternative income stream.
Yeah.
Interpret that however you like. And I won't even say that everybody that was there to earn money. I mean, some people did come there to play music and enjoy themselves,
And then
participate.
Yeah.
It's going back to what I said, isn't it? That they were all there to participate, and it was an opportunity to participate. Other than, I think that part of the problem with the rave scene, although it has all its greatness and its virtues, it's kind of only participatory by standing there and getting out your face. Whereas this gave people an opportunity to dress up. And one of our lines was, blurring the lines between audience and I can't even remember what the line was now. Audience and
the art.
The show. We blurred the lines so that nobody really knew. Well, obviously some people knew, but a lot of people didn't know. They knew what they were themselves. Other people didn't know whether they were a paid actor or just a punter dressed up acting.
How you've got all this creativity, and everything I've seen and read about Lost Vagueness was like a hyper creative environment. How does someone bring an idea and say, I'm going to do it? Were you the one who said, okay, you want to do that, we'll put that over there? Or did it just kind of just evolve organically in the same way?
It didn't start with a massive crescendo, to be honest. Although there was this kind of moment where Michael went, okay, you if you think that'll work, you do it. He gave me no resources at all. He just said, that's where you do it. Let's see if it works. And so there's, I don't know if you know the whole South East Coast, there's a little triangular field where you come off the railway line, and I think that's the top now, and it has been for a while, it's called the Unfair Ground.
Yes.
So it's quite a small field, triangular. And Michael went, well, look, do whatever you're going to do there, and we'll see how it works. So it's tiny, do you know what I mean? So what could I do? Let's just see if this festival that doesn't want to go to bed, and I've got to kind of orchestrate it in a way that makes people interested enough to want to be there rather than be hanging out by a sound system all night.
Yeah.
So like I say, we started doing it, but the first year, I obviously had no idea what I was doing. So I had a guy a few fans. There's about 10 or 15 of us that I knew that went there in order to try and achieve this. And we had 2 tents. I had a little 20 foot by 20 foot tent. It might have been 20 by 30. And I called it was a World Cup year, so I called it the World Cup CAF.
Okay.
But it was obviously different. And next to it was a little round tent, probably a 30 foot round, and that was Top Turns. And so they were going to do cabaret, and I was going to just be a alternative kind of World Cup thing. And personally, I knew that England were going to be out of the World Cup pretty swiftly. There were probably 200 World Cup cafes set up around the festival. So rather than kind of like trying to just create something completely different, I thought, well, I'll do another one because it seems to be quite popular, so it's going to be an attraction. Except I only showed 1966 World Cup games because I knew the outcome of our event was going to be much more positive than the outcome of all the others. Funnily enough, I was right. But we did other things, we did horse racing, where we would have take little bets off of people, which is probably highly illegal, but obviously they were recorded horse races, so we knew who was going to win, so we fixed the odds. I don't think we ever ripped anybody off, because anybody that placed a bet got a drink, so they were just exchanging money for drinks, and if they picked the winner, they got a free drink. It was all very basic, wasn't strictly speaking gambling, but that was where the idea came from of doing a casino. And also on the last day, when we were going to show the World Cup final of England-Argentina, and people were so out of it that they genuinely thought we were winning the World Cup. Wow. They started getting a bit raucous, so I threatened them with an omnibus edition of EastEnders if they didn't behave.
Nothing to bring you down quicker.
No, we got to watch the football. I hate football. I don't like it, but this was fun. So we did that, and then there was the Top Turns Cafe, which had really out there cabaret, and they were rammed. It was very, very popular, and so, well, I reported back to Michael going, look, I know this will work, but I know people are really into alternative bizarreness. So that was the year before. That would have been 98, I think, was a World Cup year. So 99, we did the first Lost Vagueness, where we had a casino. And we didn't actually have much in the way of dressing up. So I had gone out and bought lots of ball gowns and suits, but that was for the crew to wear, to make it look like that was something. Oh, and actually, this is my memory coming back into focus now. So the World Cup Cafe, I had a little opening behind the bar and a little tent out the back of the tent. So there was, it was tiny little tent. But behind the bar, there was a little curtain. And behind the curtain, I had a little bit of highly decorated red velvet and some pictures on the wall. And my team, my crew, we would just hang out in there wearing tuxedos and ball gowns.
Right.
And every now and again I'd open it just to see and, serve a drink through there. And people were like, what's going on back there? And I'd go, nothing! Shut the curtains, nothing at all, nothing to see. And people were desperate to see what was going on. So I made up stories, go, well, look, it's, I can't let you in there, so it's an illegal casino. But just don't mention it to anybody. And obviously, if you tell people a thing like that not to mention it to anybody, everybody mentions it to everybody else. And by the end of the weekend, we had to fight with people to keep them out of something that didn't exist. So I knew the next year we would do a casino because I knew it would be a thing. And to be fair, I also knew that everybody majoritively would hate it because it was so anti-festival. It was the complete opposite of a festival. So, the mainstream, which was then called Babylon, would frown upon it because they were going, well, why are they running a casino at this like music festival? What's that all about? And then you get all the Greens, because we were on that side of the railway line, going, this is a casino, it's all about money, we don't want that here, this is all about love and peace and harmony. So I thought, well, I can't make everybody happy, I can't piss everybody off equally and bring together both sides of that argument. And weirdly, it worked. Everybody wanted to be there. I had, you know, people from the main stages coming down after they finished their shift, coming in, wanting to get in, and me going, I'm sorry, you can't get, well, we've got access all areas passes. I'm like, yeah, but this tent's big enough for 300 people, and there's like 2,000 access all areas passes. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work. And at the same time, because I was going, oh, you can't get into this space unless you're wearing, unless you're dressed up.
Yeah.
The Greens, once they all came in, and then next thing I knew, I had a naked demonstration inside the casino because I said they had to be wearing tuxedos and ball gowns. They all got naked. And I went, yeah, but that works, isn't it? It's, as long as it's not, in my head, it was like, well, as long as it's not para boots, paramilitary gear, and a dog on a string, it's cool. So yeah, I went, yeah, naked's fine.
And it had the effect of saving that area.
Well,
people.
It had the effect of saving the entire festival, to be fair. Because by the following year, Michael did give me some resources. I'm going, yeah, this is what needs to happen. And that following year, so it would have been the second year of Lost Vagueness, but it was now established as a thing. And that year, Michael came down with the press, and he was wearing a tuxedo and a bow tie.
How did it feel to be creating something that cutting edge?
Well, I mean, I don't know how I feel about calling it cutting edge. I just found stuff and pulled it together. I didn't technically create anything, I might have created the idea, and even that was like, I'd always sing Glastonbury like the Wild West, so that was kind of something that had been in the psyche for a while. And you think of the Wild West and you think of entertainment, well, you go straight to Vegas. And you think, if you go back, I don't know, 150, 200 years to where Vegas is now, what would it have been? It would have been a place where some people would have rolled up one day and gone, yeah, this looks like a good place. And they'd have set up their encampment, and they'd have had a little bit of trouble from the local sheriff going, what are you doing? And, we're not doing anything. What's going on behind there? Oh, no, it's all right. It's not a casino. We're just pretending to be a casino. But actually, it was a casino. And then 200 years later, you've got Las Vegas. Now, if Glastonbury Festival didn't go away, we Lost Vagueness would have become the UK's Las Vegas. Yeah. There'd be buildings with swimming pools and hotels, and for miles there'd be people camping in glamping pods and yurts and oh shit, hang on, that is happening, isn't it? So nothing to do with me. I got accused around that time of turning Glastonbury Festival into a theme park. And I went, me turning it into a theme park? No, I think that was Michael Eva's into a theme park. I'm just running this little area. I haven't turned it into a theme park.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because you have that people imposing their perception of what a festival should be.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And them saying that you're turning it into a theme park sounds like it was of that time where people saw festivals as, let's deliver guitar-based bands on big stages, and nothing else matters.
Well, or techno music at that time.
And why can't you create that environment for people to do just stuff that's different. Why can't you do that?
In fairness, in the festival's defence, what I was doing wasn't really that new. It was the way I just pulled it together. So, you know, it had always been advertised as a music and arts festival, or music, dance and arts, I believe, was on the posters. I don't know what it says now, but there was always circus and theatre fields. They were there, well established, well before my time. But the difference being was, I think, the whole festival was clearly defined as, you're a punter, these are the performers. And there's a totally two-tiered system of, this is the stage, get behind the line, you just watch what's going on. Yeah. And then when you finish watching, like, you know, with the licensee and the security, when you finish watching, go home, go to bed. And obviously that wasn't working. And what I did was like, come on, guys! Look, you can come and play here all night, and you guys can come and play here as well. Yeah. And I gave the audience the opportunity to be part of the show.
Well, the people around you, how did they feel about being given this opportunity? For them, was it something that they wouldn't have got? I
think you're asking the wrong person.
Well, yeah, maybe. But were you giving these people, the people you were giving the opportunity to, were they the types to get that opportunity elsewhere, or were you the one giving them that chance to shine, whereas ordinarily they might not have had it?
I think I'd been living in London, which is, you know, to some extent the epicentre of all things artistic in the UK, or certainly around that time. And there were things happening. There were people that I knew that were putting on small events, either in small theatres or squatted places, or just in their living spaces, of having parties, if you like, but were events. And there was alternative stuff happening, and there was alternative stuff happening elsewhere, like in Brighton and Bristol and Manchester, and, you know, like stuff does, underground stuff. But it was all very much underground, and I was in a privileged enough position to have seen that and invited things to bring their thing to this bigger show, if you like, and incorporate it in a way that knitted it all together. And I think that was where previously people would find a show or a band or whatever and go, yeah, we'll put you in this box on the stage, there's your space, you do that, you thousands of people to stand there and you just watch this. And what I did was just went, well, look, here's a show, just pour it in there. Just do it in there, in that area.
And you just let it happen.
No. We still had to. I think, you know, there was still a certain amount of direction involved. But what I didn't like was this two-tier hierarchical system where you got the public, which were treated really poorly in terms of facilities, and then you got the artists, which were treated with all of the respect and luxury you could throw at them. So you got, like, you know, backstage bars for the performers, all dotted all around the site, which were really lovely, lush spaces. And then you got the bars for the punters, which were serving warm beer in paper cups that would dissolve before you could drink all of it. Yeah. And that was part of their money-making plan. That, you know, well, we can sell 7 pints to someone because half of it's going to end up on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they, you know, that was all part of the plan. And I just thought, it doesn't need to be like that. It's just not right. So I didn't have. Well, I did have a backstage bar. In fairness, I had a backstage bar, but if the public could find it, they'd be allowed in.
Yeah.
So strictly speaking, it was a backstage bar, because there'll be people listening to this going, you had a backstage bar. Yeah, had a backstage bar. We didn't stop the public from going in there. And it didn't make sense commercially to stop the public going in, because they were spending money.
Yeah.
We did vet people, because if people looked like they were going to cause trouble or didn't want to participate in the type of area that it was, we'd advise them that they'd be better going somewhere else. But I'd like for the artists that I did have, I didn't have a green room. So like our bigger art, and I remember one year clearly when we had Madness. Well, it was the last year, but it happened regularly every year. We'd have people going, oh, where's the green room? And I would direct them into the casino bar through a back door, and the back door would have a little thing over it saying green room, artists only. But they'd go in, and of course everybody in there, 200-300 people, because that's how big it was, would all be dressed up in ball gowns and tuxedos and dressed up as fairies, or in outrageous costumes, and it would all be really flamboyant. There'd be champagne being served behind the bar, and so on and so forth. And they'd come out going, wow, it's the best green room I've ever been in. And these are people that no one would really recognise, because everybody was dressed up, so they didn't stand out as looking like they were important, famous people. So they would just mingle with all the other people that they thought were with other artists, and the artists thought, look, they were all just there as punters enjoying themselves.
Which is so different to most festivals' experience, where everything is separate.
Yeah. So I did that, and it was a bit cheeky, having this sign saying green room, because I knew that it was a lie, but at the same time I knew that you have to. The art of deception, isn't it?
And these artists are some of the most privileged people on the planet.
But they
can't go anywhere without a door being held open.
But they loved it.
So
and you won't.
It's fine. They'll be all right.
I don't think there were any of the headlining acts that we had that were upset about it.
Like they're going to be,
because it was mad. It was madness. It was chaos.
And that's what that corner was about.
Yeah.
When you look back at it, with a sense of, wow, look what I helped to create.
I think in the early days it was, it's difficult. At the start of it was difficult for different reasons. It was difficult because I felt like we were on trial. And by the end of it, it was just it was a test.
Yeah.
It was a battle, because the space that we were given and the resources that we were given were nowhere near enough for what we were having to accommodate. So by the last year, which was 2007, I knew that Saturday night we were going to be completely and utterly overwhelmed to the point at which it would become dangerous, unless we put certain things in place to try and alleviate that. And the one thing I had to put in place, which it had to happen, was the one-way system.
Yeah.
The one-way system has now been expanded beyond belief. I mean, I put it in there for a few hours when it was needed. Now it's there the whole time, because it's just much easier for them to just go, yeah, that's it, that's part of it. So if you want to walk 100 yards from there, you've got to walk for 4 miles to get there at any point in the day.
I've done that walk.
Yeah, which is, it's just going back to the treatment of the punters is just not right and not fair. You don't need to have that one-way system there all day. You could just install it when it's needed, but they don't do that.
Post Lost Vagueness, do you still go to festivals then?
Well, look, like I was saying, I've lost my enthusiasm, if you like, for festivals. So the last, I know, let's leave Glastonbury, but the last Glastonbury that I did with Lost Vagueness, as Lost Vagueness, was 2007. But we carried on for a couple of years after that elsewhere. With Lost Vagueness, we did quite a few corporate events, and we went to Electric Picnic in Ireland and the Big Chill and a few other events in the last couple of years. So I think the last thing that we did was 2009 as Lost Vagueness, and then I kind of stopped and wondered what the hell had happened for the last sort of 12, 15 years.
You felt like it.
Well, you finally get off the train, and the train sort of goes off without you, and you're kind of like, what was that all about? So I spent a bit of time scratching my head, thinking, what do I want to do? What am I going to do? Obviously, I need to earn a living. I need to work. So I applied to a few production companies and stuff to try and get a job in production, who had all decided I was either overqualified or underqualified or just plain and simply too ugly. I don't know. Clearly wasn't what anyone was looking for, so I clearly wasn't going to get a job working for anybody else. I think that was probably the main thing. I didn't look like someone would be able to work for someone else. And so, I did that for a year or so, and then I thought, well, the only thing I can really do is go and carry on doing stuff at festivals again, but obviously I can't do what I was doing. So I went round to quite a lot of people who I'd employed previously, so head of stewarding firms and security firms and other tent companies, and just knocked on everybody's door saying, get a job, I want to go to a festival and see what's happening. Litter picking, I did litter picking, worked with a litter picking crew, a toilet crew, tent crew, and I got involved with all those things for a year, and it was quite eye-opening, and it also gave me an insight as to what was happening in the festival scene.
It's a different perspective.
Yeah, from a very different point of view, and then I thought, well, what I could do, what looked like was lacking, should I say, were decent structures, tents, medium size. There was massive. There was plenty of people doing massive 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people tents for the big events. And then when you scaled it down to the smaller events, there was nothing. There was people doing stuff in small green army tents, and just looked a bit miserable. There was a few people doing decent, colourful big tops, but just not enough of it. So I saw a gap, and I got offered a tent from the guy that I was been working with or for. I did a few gigs with him, and he had a tent that was too big for him. He couldn't move it. He didn't like it. He liked doing really small tents, and so I bought his big top off him, which was 12 metres by 18 metres. Not massive, but bigger than what he was used to. And I took that one tent and got a couple of, I got the gigs that he'd been doing with it. I did those, and then they asked me for bigger tents because they were growing. And then next thing I know, I had a tent business. So now I've got like about 12 or so big tops and a dozen sort of smaller traditional colourful tents. So I don't do the white frame sheds. I do colourful, traditional and big tops.
So you're away from that creative side, but still involved in festivals. When you have set up the structure, do you stay and hang around? And
rarely, because we're doing that sort of out most of the week. So Monday and Tuesday we're usually taking tents down that have been up the week before. The next event wants them up on the Monday or Tuesday, so obviously we can't do both. But by Wednesday, Thursday at the latest, everything's back up again. At which point I just want to come home. I did stay at Glastonbury, I think 3 years ago, and I won't say I hated it, but I didn't enjoy it. I felt kind of a bit miserable as to how it had changed. I mean, I hadn't been at the festival itself, even though I'd been supplying tents. I hadn't stayed there for I think it was 17 years.
Wow.
Since I left. I was away in 2007, and then I was there in 23, so 16 years. And I went back, and it was like, wow, this is a different. Is it just different because I'm seeing it from a different perspective, or is it really different? It felt really different. It felt, I don't know if I should say this because it sounds a bit bigoted, but it felt like the audience at a Tory party conference. It felt very staid. It felt very mundane, safe. Even though I hadn't been there for all that time, it all felt very much the same. It like stood still since I left, and yet it had just been homogenised, and the people that were coming to see, it's like a museum, a festival.
What you did was evolving at such pace, and I can see how, having been several times now, that you might feel that it, as it is now, is quite static.
Yeah, I do.
Is it a case that the things that you were doing and those kind of creative and pushing boundaries side that you and your team were doing, is it that that's just found at other festivals where they can be a bit more agile with it? You know, they can do something different and take a chance.
To be honest, I don't think so. I think even when I go to other festivals, I just still see the same thing happening. And I think it's funny how people reinvent the same thing as well. I mean, it literally is the reinvention of the wheel. I was at a festival a few years back where it was just before I was doing the tents, actually. So it was a few years after I'd finished doing Lost Vagueness, but I was working for a security company. And whilst I was there was some people unloading some stuff right next to where I was sort of guarding a gate. I said, well, do you need a hand? Because I had nothing better to do, so I was helping them unload. And so, what is it you're setting up? Oh wow! They went, yeah, we're setting up a silver service restaurant. I know it sounds absurd, doesn't it? At a festival, no one's ever done it before. They were going, so yeah, it's very experimental. I was going, oh yeah, really? Wow, that sounds original and amazing. Being ironic, but they weren't being ironic.
Right.
They genuinely thought they'd got this idea from their own heads, and they were just doing this brand new self-service, silver service restaurant. I'm sure. I'm sure I've seen something like this happen before. Never at a festival. There we go. No. I was like, okay, yeah. Well, yeah, you know, it's your world, isn't it? Your fantasy. You carry on living it.
Yeah.
You live your best life if that's what you want to believe. Fair enough.
Do you think there's a festival out there that could grip you and really get your attention, or are you just done with it?
I don't know. No, I can't know the answer to that because it hasn't happened. You know, I'm sure if something occurred that was out there, I'd think, wow, amazing. You know. Yeah. But I just think now the most outrageous things that happen now are the things that we were doing 25 years ago.
You know, I'd agree with that, and I don't think now when I go to festivals I see outrageous things. The things that I really value, and we've spoken when the mic wasn't on about Shambhala, what I really value is a festival that's taken time to curate something, to really think about how each area links with the next. Yeah. And so you can almost walk through, and what you were describing earlier, almost about that immersive connecting people with the art piece. And I do see it occasionally. I see glimpses of it at smaller festivals. I don't see it at bigger ones at all.
No, I think it's difficult, isn't it? And I suppose there's more restrictions due to licensing and legislation makes things that we did would now be much more difficult.
I think there's less surprise with things as well. And what I mean by that is when you were running the casino in Lost Vagueness, there was a level of unknown and you happen upon it. And so the numbers who are trying to see it, whilst I know you described it was quite big and it got almost unmanageable, but the numbers are manageable to an extent. When you have a big festival, it's so much harder to do those small interactive bits, because once people find out about them on social media or you get an interactive map on an app on a phone,
everybody instantly knows, whereas people stumbled across what we were doing. In fact, in the early years, we were having to drag people up there, which was the whole point of putting big acts on in a space early on in the afternoon when they were starting their set in an empty tent. And I had artists going, "Why are you putting us on at 6 o'clock in the evening when there's nobody here?" And I'm going, "Well, because at 6:30, when you're 3/4 of the way through your set, we'll have a full tent.
Yeah.
Then you can go away, and then we'll still have a full tent. And then the next band that comes on that no one's ever heard of, we'll be playing in front of 2,000 people."
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, wow, that's amazing."
Yeah. And I think probably when you were running Lost Vagueness and when the festival was running in the 80s, it was probably more about, well, we go to Glastonbury. I think it was probably less so.
It was definitely sold on the basis of the Glastonbury experience. It was the whole thing. And now I think it focuses far too much on the headline acts. Yeah. And I think the BBC is a bit responsible for that.
I think they wouldn't put up with not big headliners because they'll say we're paying for
but it's not it's what they don't show which is the problem. So they're not showing the smaller stuff.
I like that they don't publicise and show on the BBC the smaller areas, because I like a little bit of that discovery. When I go with a new person and they see things for the first time...
It's double-edged. It's double-edged because, as a consequence, the smaller areas get suffocated because they don't get budget, because the BBC aren't interested. The smaller areas get suffocated because their cafes and their bars don't get the attendance because everybody's watching what the BBC is showing.
That's an interesting perspective.
It's a spiral... I get what you're saying, that the nice little areas are things that you want to find, but at the same time, then there needs to be a balance. And I don't think there is. And when I was there, I won't say there was a balance, but there was an interest.
Yeah.
And it was an interest because we forced them to be interested. And ridiculously, one of the things that I did to make the BBC so interested in what we were doing, which was by throwing them out of my area.
Whatever it takes.
Well, I didn't think, this will make them really interested. No, they were being really outrageous and taking the mick. So they'd asked me, at the beginning, they'd asked me if I'd minded if they came down and filmed, and I said, yeah, I haven't got a problem with that. And they brought an OB unit down and their own little generator, set up their own little area. And then I took my eye off the ball, and then someone said, who are these people on a certain, I think on the casino stage? I said, there's people in there, who are they? I don't know. Well, they've got cameras and everything. I sort of went in there and it's like, what's going on? I didn't know who they were. Obviously, it was the BBC. And they go, yeah, we've been given permission by production to film in here. I mean, yeah, but what you filming? You've brought your own act and putting it on the stage, and you're filming it, telling everybody this is Lost Vagueness, and this is the most appalling act I would never entertain. Here, it's like kids afternoon TV programme and you're saying this is the Lost Vagueness cabaret tent. Sorry, no, I don't accept that. Yeah, you said we had permission. I said, gave you permission to come down and film what we were doing, not bring your own act and go, this is what we're doing. It's not what we're doing.
You saw a glimpse of it with Neil Young cancelling around Christmas.
Yeah, that was strange, wasn't it?
And based on the BBC trying to tell him what to do. And then he came back and said, actually, there's a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Well, but I think we all know that there was a bit of editorial influence then that was then rolled back.
Yeah.
And that influence, I think, probably from the BBC does sanitise the festival.
Yeah.
And takes that edge away from it. Is there anything that...
Well, Joe Strummer had incident with the BBC. And he said he didn't mind them. He didn't really want them filming him, but he said obviously he's on stage, you can't stop them, but he doesn't want them having a camera on the stage with him. And they ignored that, and he pushed the camera off into the pit. Along with the cameraman. I think they tried to charge him with assault. And it was like, no, he just got in my way. You know?
And there's that level of editorial independence or creative independence that you want as well, and it does change when you have an external media company saying this is what we want to see, and it does compromise it
or how we want to see it. You know? And as well, I thought, well, there's stuff that goes on down there that I need to be able to control, because if it went out to the wide world, we'd be shut down.
Not everything is for public consumption in that way.
We're not, you know, it's like a club, isn't it? You know, if you've got an over-18s club and all the people that go to that club are signed up for what's going on in it, it's perfectly fine. But you can't have it out, you know, you can't take your fetish club, for example, out into the middle of the high street in Milton Keynes and expect to get away with it.
No, there's context. There's
context, and the BBC didn't get that.
Thank you for listening. I think this has been an amazing experience for us, and I hope you've enjoyed that too. I think you could probably tell from the laughter that I really enjoyed that time speaking with Roy. I think he's brought so much to the UK festival scene, and he rightfully deserves that credit for doing the things that he did that nobody else was doing before. And Lost Vagueness was that thing, that magic that so many other people use now as a template. It was incredibly smart, and I give him a huge amount of credit, and to his team for pulling all of that together. If you've enjoyed the show, please give us a follow on Apple or Spotify. Next week, we've got a load of episodes, starting with what to pack, what it's like to arrive, where to camp. We've got some wonderful guests on those episodes. We're going to go through the lineup. We're going to have a real hype session next week, talking about hidden gems or new venues that might have popped up on some of the posters. We'll get into all of that. So please subscribe so that you know when those episodes drop.